Welcome, kids. You're back for another video. Take a look on your screen here. You'll see the title. All right. Title is going to be the 13 colonies physical characteristics. Write that down on your little book that you've got. Era. I've already written it down. Exploration, colonization. All right. So we're going to go here. Now, when you do your work today on your book, remember, you got to listen well. You got to obviously pause and rewind, right? So if you miss an answer, you got to go back. And then, of course, write your questions neat, write your answers neatly. Follow my book. Follow my book on those numbers, and you're going to get the answer just fine. All right. Now, vocab. We're not going to do the vocab on the book today, but these are the words I'm going to be using: geography, climate, harbor, agrarian, lumber, mill, and manufacture. Those are the words. We're not going to be writing those today. So let's go forward. By the end, we got to know our era, always our era. When are we in history? And can I compare the regions of the 13 colonies? And can I identify physical and geographic characteristics? Like, what about the colonies? What are they? What's different about them, right? In terms of these characteristics. So let's get going. You have your book, right? We're going to start in the front. Ready? You ready to learn? Let's go. All right. So the 13 colonies. The 13 colonies were owned and established on the east coast of the Atlantic Ocean by England. Look at that map right there. See that on the east coast? Now, another name for England is also called Great Britain. Those are the words interchangeable that I use in class: England or Great Britain. Get used to those. Now, why did they set up the colonies? Well, there were some reasons. Look at the list right there. They wanted economics. The English, right? Go God and glory, right? Economics, wealth, social, way of life. They wanted to create a new way of life. Religion, there's your God. And political, that's your power, your glory right there. So let's look at the 13 colonies. Got your answers? We're going. Now, before we do the tour of the colonies, first a word. Now, there are layers here. What do I mean? Well, like when you look at a burger and you see all the layers of what's in the juicy burger, right? Right. The 13 colonies have different parts to them. So the 13 colonies have layers that create a perfect mix of ingredients for a person living in those different regions or colonies. So what does this mean? It means people back then had a lot of different reasons for choosing to live where they lived. And this is what we want to identify. Now, the layers that we will look at are as follows. Ready? Put these down on your list. We are going to look at climate, the weather. We're going to look at geography. That's the physical layout of the land. We're also going to look at economy, how people made money in different parts of the colony. We're going to look at religion, at different influences of religion, and people, important people, significant people. Now, for the video today, we are going to look only at the climate, geography, and economies of the 13 colonies. That's all we're going to look at today, and you're going to fill out your charts that you see at the bottom of each page. Now, let's start with this on your questions. Take a look at this picture. See anything unique? See any features, physical geography that's different here? Now, there's some water on one side, so we're going to call this a harbor or port. Now, on the land side, you might see some homes, you might see some businesses. Now, a harbor or a port is unique, and this is where we start to see the 13 colonies kind of be born out of. So what is a port or a harbor? Let's look at these questions here and answer them. This is a city or community that is built between or on water and land. And this has some advantages. Like, what's good about having a city like that? Well, by using the waterways, you can use that waterway for your benefit. Back in the times of exploration, people didn't have cars. They used animal transportation and mostly ships. Remember the symbol of the ship for the exploration? So their ships and boats were their means of transportation. And if you could travel down a channel or a river, then you could get places inland. You could get food if you need it for your family. You could get furs. Remember furs for money. You could create a community on the water, and that was beneficial. Take a look at these pictures here of New York and Boston. Look at those cities. See how big they are? And they're built right on those water channels. And that gives them access to economies and goods that otherwise they wouldn't get. Now let's look at the map on your screen. You see the cities: Boston, New York, Philadelphia. See how they're all kind of close to the water or a river? That's important. That's why these cities ended up blowing up so much in the colonies. Look at your map on the front of your chart there. I want you to label those mountains in that map. Do you see that? Those are the Appalachian Mountains. And I want you to draw these triangles right on your map. You can use a color or marker and make sure they're nice and dark. These mountains will become really important in our next chapter, all right? So make sure you do that art for the Appalachian Mountains. You ready to move? Let's go. Call me time. Open your book. Let's start at the top. Let's start with the northern or New England. Get it? New England colonies. We're going to name them right now. We're going to write the names down. Ready? We're going to start at the top, New Hampshire. We're going to go down Massachusetts, then Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Now, if you look on the right, I do a little memory trick. Never make Cindy run. Never make Cindy run. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. You wrote them? Okay, we're going to practice those in class. Now, look at your chart. Let's fill it in with some art and some answers. I'm going to start on the left with climate. Now, what's up in New England? Why is it different? Well, New England, the northern region, it has cold winters, very long. It also has frigid temperatures. So there's going to be a lot of snow there. You see the little snow cloud? So what's the effect here? If you're living there and it's really freezing and cold a lot, what's going to be that effect for your life? How's that going to affect you? It's going to create a colony that is very far north. Because why? It doesn't get a lot of sunlight. Like, it's not pounded with sun rays. Like, think of the valley, right? Super hot. Over in the north region, it's not that intensely hot. So it gets less sun, and it's going to be cold a lot. Now, this is going to affect kind of how we live in the north. So look at that, the geography column. What's different about the north is that it has rocky terrain. See that? Land, soil made of rocks. Now, there is soil in the ground, but it's mixed in with a lot of rocks. Now, this creates a very big effect in the economics or the money making. Now, most people back then, they wanted to farm. But if you lived in the north, you couldn't farm as well, and you couldn't have a big farm. Yes, you could have a small farm, but your crops were going to be really small because you didn't have a lot of good dirt or soil for your crops. So people had to adapt. How did they adapt for money? Look at that economics column. The people there used their harbors, their ports. Remember the water and the city? And a lot of these men went to work in the ocean being fishermen because people have to eat. They got to eat fish. Not only that, this is really cool. Some of these men turned to whaler jobs. That means they were fishing whales for whale blubber because that's a source of heat and oil. So they turned into whalers. That's pretty freaking cool. Now let's go back to the geography column. Another feature that is geographical is that there are a lot of dense forests there. So like lots of trees. Specifically, see those trees on the screen right there? Those pine trees, those Christmas trees. And since there's a lot of tree, that means there's just a lot of wood available to use. Now, what could someone who wants to make a living do with all that tree and all that wood? Well, there's an effect there. Let's follow it. They would they would turn into shipbuilders. They would use that forest wood and they would build ships because back then ships were the big thing. You had to have one, boats, ships. So plenty of trees, plenty of ships, and there were lumber mills. What is a lumber mill? It is a factory where the wood gets processed and cut and torn into parts that people could use for wood, like shipbuilding. Cool. You got your answers for New England? Yes. Now this is what we want to know. This is what we want to remember. Don't worry if you didn't memorize it all right now, but we're going to practice it in class. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening here. See the rocky soil? Look at those pine trees. And of course, the men and the women there, they had a tough life, but they adapted to it with the shipbuilding and the whaling and the fishing. Okay, cool. So let's go on to the mid-Atlantic colonies. These are the middle colonies. Ready? I'm going to name them. Find it in your chart. Let's name them. New York, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, very big state there. New Jersey, and last but not least, Delaware. New pennies, new dimes. Look at that memory trick. I say that in class. New pennies, new dimes, new pennies, new dimes. Now, ready? Let's get our chart done. What's different about the middle colony that's not like the others? The climate. It's in the middle. So think Goldilocks. Look at that. It's moderate, mild. See the picture? It's not too hot, not too cold. It's right in the middle. So because it's in the middle, it's very predictable. It's less extreme. And there's plenty of rain and plenty of sun. Not too cold, not too hot, which is a great temperature and weather for the geography of the land. So there's lots of rivers, which is really cool because these rivers provide food like fish and furs, and people can hunt and they can use it as a community there to build their cities on. Now, another feature there is that the open plains are there. There's lots of plains. There's lots of plains there. Now, what do I mean by plains? I mean that they're open fields. So what does this create, this effect? It means that there's lots of farms. And now, look at those farms specifically, because you're going to have to draw something right now. Their farms focus on those cash crops. Do you see the list right there? Corn, wheat, grains. So this part of the colonies is called the bread basket because they make a lot of bread there. Yes, I know, literal bread, like pan. So this bread basket produces their economy. Let's go to the economics column. The wheat farming is huge here in the middle because there's so much open field for that cash crop. Now, this creates an effect because the other industry that forms is that major factories are going to be built here. Factories are going to be born here because there's so much open space and so much farming for grain that they're going to build factories. Now, factories for what? Trade jobs. What is a trade job? It's a person who works with their hands and builds something, right? Like an ironsmith who works with metal, or a leather worker, or a saddle maker. And we still have trade jobs today. They're just a little different. So this is unique about the mid-Atlantic colonies. Factories are going to be born here. Now, looking at these pictures, they're really cool. Here's something unique about the middle. Because it's not too far north or south and right in the middle, it has the most diverse people. A lot of people from different cultures come to the middle to make their living. Some famous cities here: Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, huge. New York City, guys, the big New York. It's in the middle colonies. It's really diverse there. Okay, last colony. You ready? Get to your chart. Ready? We're going to name them. Okay, let's start. We're going to start with Maryland. Maryland. Then we're going to go down to Virginia. Then North Carolina, South Carolina, and last but not least, Georgia. My vehicle needs some gas. That's the memory trick. My vehicle needs some gas. Gonna practice those, okay? Let's look at our chart. The Southern colony is huge. It's got a lot going on. As a matter of fact, you've already learned in class some of the Southern colony because of your learning that you've done. Let's look at the climate. Look at the sun. Super humid, warm temperatures, hot all the time. Okay, think about that. So that has an effect. If it's really hot and really humid, lots of rain, what does that mean for the climate? It means that there's going to be tons of cash crops because there's rainy seasons. It's lots of rain. Look at the cash crops at the bottom, like tobacco and cotton. Always rainy there. So what's going on with the land? The geography is open because it's not so much rain. That soil is rich and fertile. What do I mean? It means the soil can grow lots of crops really fast and really well. All right. Now, if you got all that soil and you're growing really well, what does that mean? It means that your field is big and you have a huge growing season. So you're always growing those cash crops. Now, this is going to lead to the economics. It's all connected here. The economics in the South is, look at that, it's agrarian economy that is based on the plantations. What do I mean? Farmers, farming. Agrarian means farming culture. It's always working in the South because of those cash crops, because of that soil, because of that temperature. It's always going on because we're always growing crops. So we grow cash crops. And slavery. The South region is the #1 reason why slavery explodes in the New World, kids, because those slaves are working on the plantations, working those cash crops. So the South is making a lot of money, but they're also using a lot of slaves to make that money. Yeah. Okay. Got your chart down? Good. Cash crops there. Look at the triangle. Remember the triangle? The South is going to make that slave triangle blow up in the New World. And that's what they're about in the South, making that money, economics from the cash crops. So now, by the end, can you identify some of the differences in the 3 regions? Do you know a few of them in your mind, maybe? I hope you do. And more importantly, can you figure out how people made a living back then based on where they lived? Kids, if at this point you got some of that info, you're golden, but we'll practice in class, all right? So I just want to say thank you for your work, and I'll see you in class. All right.